Sit down, we need to talk. So you went out and bought yourself a number 33 bench plane. You thought it'd be a good investment because you had a 20% coupon. Well, this thing's a turd, I'll tell you right now. This won't cut anything. You see this big old piece of turd that they call a plane? Yeah, this is factory. From the look of this leading edge of this blade, I would say somebody purchased this and used it right out of the box without tuning it up and didn't get the results they expected, of course, and returned it. I mean, look at this thing. This whole plane is just greasy. Grab yourself a beer. We're going to be here a while. So the first thing I do is take the handles off. They're just standard wood-turned handles. Come off with a flat blade. Here's the second one. And take all the adjusting hardware off of this. So this is the second number 33 Harbor Freight bench plane that I have purchased. The first one I tuned up a few days ago, and I planed down the edge of a door that was about 1/8 of an inch too wide to fit into the door. And I have to tell you, this thing cut like butter. This thing is so out of whack out of the box that you'll be lucky if you make chips with this thing. And I will show you exactly what I did to tune this number 33 plane up. Get yourself a container of some kind. Grab some degreaser and degrease. You got to take this factory oil off of it. Be careful because it is sharp enough to cut you. You can take a cloth. Put all your parts in the water after you spray them down with some degreaser. The last thing you want on your woodworking and on your hands is grease, because that will mess up the finish. And surprisingly, this is not aluminum. This is ferrous metal. This is steel. I thought this was just some cheap aluminum, and then I stuck a magnet on it. But to sharpen your plane blade, you need one of these honing guides. And it comes with a little roller ball right here. And it is essential that you lubricate this, because this is my second honing guide that I've had, and this little roller seized up and it slid back and forth on the whetstones and basically flattened one side of it, making it useless. So I threw it away and bought a new one. Spray some lubricant in there. And make sure that it is spinning nicely. You don't want it rusting out on you, and you don't want it seizing up on you when you're rolling it back and forth. On the side of this honing guide, it says for a 30-degree bevel on your plane blade, it's 30 millimeters. And it says for a 25-degree I believe that's a 58. That's what I did my last one. I don't know if that's a 50 or a 56 or a 58. I just put it at 58 and the thing cut beautifully. So I set my little square at 58 millimeters and you put your blade in there like this. Tighten it down and slide your blade out until it touches at 58 millimeters. And I usually flip it over and adjust it even more. Once you have it set, then you tighten the bolt down with the screwdriver and remeasure. You don't want it moving on you. You don't want it getting crooked or anything like that. It's set to 58 millimeters on both sides, so you should have a fairly square bevel. So this is just an old storage container that I use for honing my blades. I have various stones of various grit. I have a 260, I have a 180, I have a 360. So we're going to start out with a 180, work our way up to 260, then 360. Then I have these diamond stones. This is a die sharp fine, and this is 600 grit. And then I have a die sharp extra fine, which is 1200 grit. Then I have 2000 grit sandpaper, and this will get the turd of a Harbor Freight number 33 plane to work like a diamond. So take the 180, I just set it on a flat surface like that, and back and forth. The blade probably isn't straight, I'm not sure. We're going to fix that. And we're just going to keep going back and forth, pressing down as hard as you can. This is going to take a while to set the bevel on this correctly. And I don't count how many strokes I do or laps I do. I just go for a minute, then flip it over, and you'll see how unstraight this is once I rub this on here for a few seconds. And that takes the burrs off the back and cleans it up. And initially, sharpening this blade took me about an hour and a half to 2 hours of just going back and forth, setting the bevel on here, then moving to the next grit. And you can see how messed up this is. It's not even touching the center, so it's kind of concave, I guess you call it. So after about 15 minutes of honing on one side, then flipping it over, honing on another side, you see this is flattened out enough to give you an edge. There's a slight burr on this side. So since we've got this pretty much flat on the edge, and we have the face set on this, I'm going to move to the higher grit of 260. All of these three were purchased at Harbor Freight, and just keep honing away. Hone one side, flip it over, hone the other side. Here's about 10 minutes of honing with the 260 grit stone. Now this is where it starts to get really sharp. Once you move to the 360, this is where it gets really sharp. So you got to be careful. Once you move to 600 and 1200 grit, then you can easily take off a finger. You probably shave with this thing when you're done. Again, hone for a minute, flip it over, do the other side, hone for another minute, flip it over, do the other side. Here's 360 grit after about 10 minutes of honing. This is sharp enough to cut off a finger. You can see how much metal has come off this thing in the water. So now I'm going to move to the 600 grit. If you don't want to go out and spend $50 on a diamond honing stone, you can always go out to Harbor Freight and buy this 4-sided diamond hone block. It has 200, 300, 400, and 600. 600 grit, it would be plenty to make this cut through wood. But we're going to go way past 600. We're going to go up to 2000. And you'll see a huge difference in the metal and the way it cuts. So you see at 600 grit, it's starting to get shiny. The back of the blade is getting evened out. This kind of tells you how crappy this Harbor Freight blade is. So we're going with the extra fine 1200 grit stone. Again, do it for about a minute, flip it over, do it another minute, rinse and repeat. And at this grit, it usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes of honing to get a decent result and get everything leveled out. The tip right here is 1200 and this back here is 600. So both the 600 grit and the 1200 grit took me about 20 minutes of running this back and forth on the stone. I have my thumbs on the back of the honing guide and 2 fingers on each side of the blade, pushing down as hard as I can without slipping and taking off a finger. And every once in a while, make sure your roller is still functioning so you're not wearing a flat spot on this. You see how it's starting to really get a shine to it. Now this thing is razor sharp. It will cut down to the bone. I'll take my 2000 grit sandpaper, lay it on top of one of the larger whetstones. I'm just going to run this back and forth just like I did before. And then to do the back side of this, I pushed the paper right up against the side of the stone, right up on the edge, and start out slowly. So you see the mirror finish on this. 2000 grit. So I will call this blade done. See right here that it's a little low. Plain flat surface now. Still see a high spot on the sides. This thing's fairly flat in the middle. That's what you need. When you're doing this, sanding this steel, you should always wear a mask because there's all kinds of light dust around. So I've got the 180 grit stone. I'm going to run this over it a couple times for about 10 minutes just to help flatten this out even more. So you can see how much metal shavings I took off of the blade, and from the foot of that plane, the water is pretty much just black. With minimal force, you're able to push this along the wood and take off a nice thin ribbon of wood. That's how sharp this blade is. And you can practically see through this. So if you want to win this number 33 Harbor Freight bench plane, leave your best, well, or your worst, your mama joke down below. open to U.S. residents only. I'm not paying international shipping on this. This is not exactly light. And when I hit 2,000 subscribers, then I will randomly pick a person who has commented and left a Your Mama joke.